I'm Victoria Hills and I'm the Chief Executive of the Royal Town Planning Institute. Executive of the Royal Town Planning Institute. I'm the senior responsible officer, if you like, for the professional body. We are the largest planning professional body for chartered planners in Europe, and we've got three main overarching objectives, if you like. We're a membership body, so we're here for professional planners throughout their career. From cradle to grave, we provide training, events, professional development, and we monitor professional standards, including their own conduct and discipline. We're also a lobbying body, so we influence national planning policy in England and across the devolved nations and Ireland, but also internationally, to try and influence the direction and practice of planning. And thirdly, we are a learned society, so we undertake research to influence the art and science of town planning for the betterment of society. And we are a charity. So we're not a trade body per se, but we're there for our membership. With 26,000 members now, we've never been so strong at quite a key time, certainly in the UK planning context, influencing planning policy, but also environmental policy and legislation. So big ticket items for us on the agenda over the next 12 to 18 months are the Environment Bill and also the Planning Bill. So we've got a lot on. Very interested in a climate action in particular. We launched our own Plan the World We Need campaign last year with a big focus on how planning can work to influence achieving the net zero ambitions or targets set by the UK government and beyond. Delighted to be asked to be a commissioner for the Essex Climate Action Commission, not least because I am a resident of Essex, but also it brings an opportunity for me to layer in some of my own expertise as a professional chartered planner myself, but working on behalf of the planning profession to embed net zero into our policy and practice, to be able to bring that to an Essex county-wide opportunity. There is, clearly lots of local authorities have declared a climate emergency, but here you have a local authority who's not just declaring an emergency, but also wants to make a real plan, if you like, to put their money where the mouth is, to influence change, and very systematically looking across all of the policy levers, all of its own operations, no stone unturned. How can they, as an authority, but also as a community working with residents, with business, make a real impact to achieve those net zero ambitions? The community, I think, would recognise, as I do, a resident, that we can all make little changes to the way that we lead our lives, to how we buy services, whether it's electricity, to how we move around, whether it's about moving to electric vehicles, what happens to our waste, do we recycle enough, what about our homes, are they insulated enough, are we wasting energy, and how are we working, what's the office environment looking like in the future? I think if you knit all of that together, you have a comprehensive strategy and you have a real opportunity to deliver on the county's ambitions. And that's really what the Commission is seeking to do, is knit together all the bits and pieces, whether it be education, health, roads, transport, homes, energy, waste, putting the whole lot together into a very rich strategy gives you that opportunity. So I think there's a real opportunity here for residents and businesses to be engaged in that. And whilst they may feel, as I do, well, my little bit is just a little bit, I think when you scale up and have a big conversation across all the facets, then there's an opportunity to really enact real change and deliver on the net zero ambitions. Look at this a bit from through a policy planning lens, if you like. And one of the things that can happen both locally, but perhaps with a stronger steer nationally, is looking at, are we putting the things that generate more carbon, so the things that generate more energy, and by that I mean businesses and homes, are we putting those places in the right places to encourage us meeting our net zero ambitions? And that could be in relation to, is it encouraging us to travel more by where those homes are, or could we put those homes in a place that may be more sustainable location? But also, and that relates to jobs as well, but also in putting those homes or jobs in that location, is that the most sustainable location in terms of the energy that's required to get water and energy there? Is it the right place from a flood defence perspective? And I think we need to look at things through a real carbon lens, if you like. And I go back to my phrase, no stone unturned. It's not just about the building itself, but about the location of that building and how it relates to other things around it. So yes, there's a real role here for the county in its own policy, whether that be planning policy, and the local plans in particular provide a really strong statutory framework to do that. But I think sharpening up at a national level, the location of development really should be in a low carbon location first. That should be sharpened up nationally so that we're clear, what does that mean? Where is the best place to put these new homes, these new schools, these new hospitals or doctor surgeries? Where does it make most sense from a community perspective, but where does it make most sense from a carbon perspective? And if there isn't the right policy framework in place to drive that, and ultimately things will just be sort of delivered in their own little silos or echo chambers as to what makes sense for that particular project. So I think we need a far more strategic conversation about these things. As a professional body, we've put the idea to government that green growth boards would be a sensible place to do that in the absence of strategic planning. Get the right players around the table, from education, from health, from industry, from commerce, from the public sector, but also the private investors. And if anyone is involved in bringing forward major capital projects, and they need to be around that table so that there's an opportunity to join the dots with other people bringing forward major capital projects, to think about where's the right place to put it together for the, I guess, if you like, the agglomeration impact of minimizing the carbon impact. What Essex and its residents can expect to see, if we get this right, in a very meaningful way, is that there's an incentive that any new home built is built in a low carbon way. So this relates to the products going into it, but how it operates, operating in a very energy efficient way. I think the same can be applied to buildings, particularly that the county are commissioning, whether they're educational establishments. The same must be true for public health. So NHS commissioning extensions to hospitals or more public healthcare hubs, the same principles must apply. I think there are exciting times ahead for transport, particularly greening transport. Electric is going to be really key in transport fleets. I know the county's already got some really innovative projects leading the charge, if you'll pardon the pun, in how to charge these vehicles going forward. But we'll see other innovations in personal mobility, whether that's through e-scooters or the sharing of vehicles, or moving to more sharing economy, where perhaps you don't need to own your own vehicle, but you can access one in a low carbon way when you need to. And living in communities such as ideas that have been mooted on sort of the 10 or 15 minute community, where for the majority of your week You've got everything you need within a walkable or cyclable or e-scootable reach, that doesn't seem you needing to do long trips, except for where you need to catch up with other people or for your leisure purposes. So I think there's an opportunity here to build the sorts of communities that people really want to live in. We're all much more cognizant now of the communities we live in, not least COVID has provided a catalyst for communities to be re-engaged with their communities, because they're spending a lot more time in their neighbourhood. And I think building in some of the low carbon opportunities, not just into new build, but also into existing stock, because let's face it, most of the development that's going to happen is going to relate to existing buildings, existing development, whether that be through permitted development or retrofitting, extensions, repurposing of buildings. There is an opportunity here to embed some of these low carbon principles into that. I think what the Commission does is an opportunity to elevate that and to provide some real tangible objectives and targets for what all of that looks like, to make it real with the community, local residents and business. Because one of the challenges in talking about climate action is it all feels far too sort of abstract, or I can't get to it, it's too big for me to have any impact on. I think Commission provides an opportunity to distill that down. What does it actually mean for you? What can you do as an investor, as a household, as an employer, as a procurer of public service, as a developer? What does it look like for you? Where can you have an impact? And if the Commission can get that right in telling that story, then I think there is a real opportunity to not just make the change, but actually take everybody with the Commission on this important journey to delivering on net zero. One of the challenges we've seen as a professional body working in the sphere of planning is it's really important, if you're having a conversation with communities about the need for housing, the need for employment space, to demonstrate that there's going to be the appropriate level of infrastructure coming with that. And without getting too technical about it, there's a mechanism in place currently called Section 106, Community Infrastructure Levy, which provides the framework for doing that in a timely way. Indeed, many developers want to have that infrastructure in place, because it's quite difficult, for example, if we take housing, to sell a home if a road's not there, if the school places aren't there, if there's no doctor surgery available, and there's no amenity, green space, and there's nothing on the horizon coming anytime soon. It's actually quite difficult to sell that home in some respects, because it's not a very attractive proposition for somebody if they're going to have those complications to their daily life. What we're seeing coming through planning policy now in the white paper that was consulted on last year and the forthcoming bill, some quite fundamental changes proposed to government on how infrastructure will be provided through a single infrastructure levy. And this provides an opportunity to provide that certainty to communities, residents and business, that when new development comes, that there is going to be the infrastructure there that's required to make it work, that's going to improve daily life, not make it more difficult. And so we're going to be holding the government's feet to the fire on this to ensure that that policy change does what it says on the tin. So, what we don't want is, I think what your question is alluding to, is that housing is springing up without that infrastructure there. It's bad commercially to not have the infrastructure there, because how are you going to sell homes if people haven't got the infrastructure? It just doesn't make business sense. But it doesn't make sense from a community either. And I think that we have to have an open and honest conversation with the community that infrastructure is absolutely paramount to having a sensible conversation about the level of housing, or the level of schools, or the level of additional employment spaces, or the additional health space that's going to be needed to deliver the targets that have been set by government. clearly infrastructure is a really important point on that. So this is something I think we all need to keep a really close eye on as the planning bill comes down the line during 2021. I'm aware that many local authorities around the UK have brought together or bringing together individuals to establish climate commissions. I think what makes Essex slightly unique in this is the progress that's been made to date, but also their ability as a county to convene, to work with the private sector, to have developer groups being part of the conversation. I think that's really important, because all too often you have echo chambers of people talking about what's needed, perhaps to the converted. Clearly, a huge procurer of development services is going to be the county itself, and absolutely Essex needs to put its own house in order in commissioning and buying those products, those services, those buildings. But an equally important part in this is the investor community, whether it be the house builders, whether it be the commercial property sector, whether it be something else. And that engagement of that sector in the process is really, really important. So I'm impressed that those groups exist, that mechanism exists here in Essex. And I think that will be a real important part of the success in the Commission actually being able to achieve what it sets out to achieve, and to have some real tangible outputs, if you like, because I think the county can be bold here in saying, well, if you want to come and build in Essex, doesn't matter what you're building, whether it's employment space or homes or leisure space, you know, we're open for development here, but you've got to build to these standards. You've got to work with us to commit to delivering on our net zero ambitions. So I think they're off to a flying start. There will be challenges and details ahead that are tricky, but my advice to the county is to hold your nerve on these things, and it will pay dividends in the future for what is already a very attractive county to live in. I think by holding your nerve on some of these big aspirations will continue to ensure that success is the case for many generations to come.